And often what I've seen in the evolution of workplace wellbeing in my time is that we tend to focus on the employees, the individuals that work in these organizations, and we try to fix our employees by providing them with education, fruit bowls, yoga classes, educational sessions on how to eat better, sleep better, exercise more. What's that got to do with the workplace? Workplace wellbeing, what I really like to get organizations to think about is the primary focus is on fixing the working environment.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Recruiting Revolution Season 2. Our guest today is amazing Philly Powell, the founder and CEO of Wellbeing Tech. So Wellbeing Tech is a workplace accreditation program for organizations committed to the well-being of their people. We'll get to know about the organization better in our podcast later. With over 17 amazing years of experience in various people and cultural roles, Philly is an award-winning well-being leader. Welcome to the podcast, Philly, and we are so excited to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Great. So to jump off on the podcast, can you tell us about your amazing journey so far?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it began when I left college and I went to university, having no clue what to study. Looked at the list of degrees and decided to study tourism management because that sounded fun. And within that degree, there was a paper on human resources, which I really loved. And then when I left university trying to look for my first job, I found it really challenging to find a role in tourism management. So I went to a recruitment agency and they said, why don't you go along to this interview? It's a payroll job. And at about 22 years old, I had no idea that they paid people to pay people. That I never even knew about a payroll function. So I started that role and it was, I guess, my entry into working in an HR team. And that really, I guess, I started to get excited about working in that space. And from there, I went through various HR roles through various different organizations, government departments, private companies, banking. And as I progressed through my HR career, I got to a point in 2015 where I took the role at Chorus, which is a big telecommunications broadband organization here in New Zealand. And part of my HR role was to design and implement their wellbeing program. And so at that point in time in my life, I was also on my own personal wellbeing journey and really starting to explore ways that would help me feel better, have more energy, be more happier in my life. And so getting to what I described, merge my passion with my profession, was pretty much surreal. Like it felt crazy that I was getting paid to hire yoga instructors and inspire an organization on how to be healthier. And then from there, as I took that organization to a point of, being very strategic in the wellbeing space, winning some national awards, I felt that I had a calling to expand that expertise, knowledge, experience further. And I worked with a mentor who helped me come up with the concept or, facilitated me to come up with the concept of Wellbeing Tech, as you alluded to earlier, workplace wellbeing accreditation program. And so I'm really on a mission to help reduce or eliminate the negative impacts of work on people's well-being. I don't know what it's like in India, but we're definitely seeing some pretty alarming statistics when it comes to the likes of burnout, bullying, and lack of belonging in the workplaces these days. So that's the mission I'm on. And I'm really interested to know what's happening in India from our workplace well-being space.
Yeah. So in India, it's more like, because in India we are generally going 5 days a week in office. So we are always in office. Like sometimes you are working from home as well. So the major thing that is the HR. So it's the HR's responsibility to, make sure that, we have fun Fridays, we have companies lunch, and, we go to different places on weekends as a whole company. So this is what we are doing for the well-being of employees. We would love to know like what all things can we include from the perspective of HR, because we don't have any programs as such. We do have speakers who tell us more about the information, like what we can do other than all these traditional things, I would say. But we haven't had the privilege to go on a program and give employee the program list, like whether we are a great place to work for. I mean, which generally companies are doing nowadays.
Okay, so it sounds like it's in its beginnings over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably what a good thing to do now is define what is workplace well-being. And I think that there is a lot of misconception out there. And often what I've seen in the evolution of workplace well-being in my time is that we tend to focus on the employees, the individuals that work in these organizations, and we try to fix our employees by providing them with education, fruit bowls, yoga classes, educational sessions on how to eat better, sleep better, exercise more. What's that got to do with the workplace?
True.
Like it does, don't get me wrong. Of course, if people are sleeping better, eating better, exercising, they are going to be more productive, energetic, happier at work. But workplace well-being, what I really like to get organizations to think about is the primary focus is on fixing the working environment.
Yeah.
So I was on LinkedIn last week and I saw this post that said, trying hard not to roll my eyes when HR launches another wellness initiative, yet they don't fix the toxic working environment.
Yeah.
So I think that is the challenge of the types of initiatives you listed earlier. And it's not just those examples. There's many organizations here in New Zealand and across the world that they are like individually focused interventions as opposed to work-related interventions that is really getting to the heart of how is work in terms of the team you're working with, the people you're working with, your manager or your leader, the culture, the physical working environment, the policies.
True.
How's that impacting your well-being? And so when we actually start to talk to our people about those types of things, survey them, interview them, and we start to address what's, there's an internationally, Australia, this movement towards psychosocial hazards. So when we think about health and safety, we're often thinking about the physical environment and not hurting ourselves physically, but there is a movement globally looking at the psychological impact of work on people's well-being, or essentially the impact of work on people's mental health.
Yeah.
The work-related stress, right? So here in New Zealand at the moment, latest research or a study done recently was 57% of New Zealanders are at risk of burnout. Okay. And that's crazy. Yeah. And so you can see how the Friday lunches and the weekend family events is actually not solving that. Yeah. So that's what I really try to get organizations to understand when we're talking about workplace well-being. We're talking about putting things in place to support a really positive, healthy working environment. Mm-hmm. So when these people, like if we're recruiting, we want to give a bit of a descriptor on our website, on our careers site around what does the organization do to support my well-being once I come and work here? Yeah. Once I get the job and I'm in the organization, how do we induct those people and onboard those people and let them know where they can go for support if they're struggling? What are the policies in place that support their well-being? So, yeah, that's really important to clear that up at the start.
That is true. We're going to talk about more in our later questions, on these the tips and what can like companies invest. We'll talk about it more in the later questions. So that is surely true. Like it's really important to lay the groundwork and make the change the policies and modify the policies so that things get smooth rather than just lunches and all those stuff. Can you tell us more about your organization, like how Wellbeing Tech is helping companies in changing the well-being of the organization for a better way?
Yeah, sure. So Wellbeing Tech, there's a couple of ways that our organisation supports workplaces. So the Wellbeing Tech accreditation program is kind of like our hero offering. It's a kind of a minimum of a 3-year time investment. And we go on a 3-year journey and work through a framework that has 7 pillars, things like boosting holistic well-being, supporting your people, developing leadership capability, reducing the risks. And within those pillars of this best practice framework, there's a whole bunch of criteria that sits behind it. So essentially, our organisation spent time in 2021 researching other global workplace wellbeing accreditation programs, the ISO international guidelines, codes of practice in Australia, did a lot of research to understand what does best practice look like and how do we create a framework that helps organisations build a wellbeing culture and simplifying the process. It can be quite confusing as to know where to start. So we help take organisations on a journey through a structured framework, and we start to help them build a strategy by responding to the specific wellbeing challenges that their people are facing. So that is looking at what their people are facing on a personal level at home, and also the wellbeing challenges that they are facing in the workplace. So then we can build a strategy that responds to the specific challenges of those people within that organisation, as opposed to kind of like the shiny things that we see on LinkedIn or that company over there is doing that, it's on trend. It's really about getting to the root cause of what's creating stress within that organisation. And so we do a survey and focus groups, and build out that report with recommendations and run workshops to help build the plan or the strategy, and then support the organisation to go through the criteria. So what I would say is it requires a very high level of commitment and resources to do this work. It doesn't happen overnight, hence that it is a 3-year program at a minimum. And we're really trying to help organisations make systemic changes to the way they're working, because based on a lot of the statistics right now of the impact of work on people's well-being, how we're working isn't working.
Yeah. So, you might have done a lot of surveys of different companies. So what do you think is the number one challenge, like the top challenge that you've seen, which is common in the companies?
Yeah. So I think it really is as simple as most workplaces are struggling from higher demands and lower resources and support.
Okay.
So essentially high workload, high work pace, like the demands of the job and the volume of work that people have to get through within tight deadlines, and then limited resources. So, in the current kind of global economy that we are living in right now, post-COVID era, organizations are downsizing, teams are getting leaner, and we're having to do a lot more with less resources. Plus, I will also say that what I'm really starting to see emerge is a tendency for people to get addicted to work.
Yeah. So they're working on weekends, you might say?
Working, whether that is, starting work really early and working long days, or working into the evening, not missing family dinners, working through lunch breaks, not having any breaks, having, email and work notifications on their smartphones, on their watches, interrupting family dinners, weekends. Like it kind of, when does it stop? And so while I obviously am really keen to help organizations take responsibility for how they are impacting their people's well-being, I think there is some support needed for individuals and employees. That a lot of it is perception, right? And so a lot of employees perceive that they need to work longer or harder in order to keep their jobs, to get the pay rise, to get the promotion, or just perfectionists. And for some people, work can be addictive because it's a sense of achievement. People might be, there's a loneliness epidemic. So for some people that are experiencing loneliness, work is actually their social connection. Work is what's giving them purpose and meaning. So instead of spending perhaps all of the weekend feeling disconnected, people are tapping into work to make them feel less lonely, which is a frightening concept, really.
Yeah. So, this is really interesting topic that so what do you think, like, what do you suggest in this situation?
To support the individuals or organizations, or
how can employees, not worry about work on things? That's
yeah. So I guess the key word here is boundaries. And one of the first things, so I talk about my mantra, if you like, is well-being first, work second, always. And so what I'm really trying to, empower people to really think about is putting their well-being first. And so one of the first things I would say is work the hours you get paid for. So for example, most people in the world, on average, are contracted for 40 hours per week, 5 days, as you said earlier. So if you're getting paid to work 40 hours, that's a really good goal to work for that. Now, I know on salaried workers, obviously there's going to be a requirement for you to work a bit more than 40 hours some weeks. But I think it's, managing the ebbs and flows. There will be times where we have deadlines. There will be times we need to put in more. But it's about balancing that. So if we go, maybe you work in finance and it's month end, year end, and you're particularly busy at that period, and you might work 10-hour days for a couple of weeks. I would be saying if you are if you're a great employer or a great leader, you'd actually be allowing those employees to take back that time in lieu. So you've gone over and above. How about you take a day when we quieten down a bit? So I think, for the employee to really manage the hours that they're working. And I guess if they're really struggling to do their work within the Monday to Friday, 5 days a week, 40 hours, then having a conversation with their manager to say that they are struggling to get through it. The second thing that I would say is, often I think people plan their life around their work. And what I'm encouraging people to do is plan their work around their life.
Yeah.
So an example of that would be, as humans, we're designed to move. So when are you going to exercise? I'm an early riser, 5:30 in the morning. I'm at the gym or out running or whatever that looks like. Or perhaps you're an evening person and you like to do that, or perhaps you can fit that in your lunch break. So I think it's, how do you set up your day or your week? We have some really great flexible working policies globally these days. We don't need to work 9 to 5. We don't need that really rigid structure. So how do we think about putting the non-negotiables into our calendar, the things that are really going to make us healthier and happier people and more productive and engaged employees, and then work fits around that. Obviously, I'm not saying that sometimes we will have to forgo the lunchtime run or the early morning gym class to get work done. But hopefully that's a very small percentage of your time. And then the third thing I'd say about how employees can really, reduce that risk of burnout or work-related stress is to slow down.
Yeah.
So how many of us are logging onto our computer in the morning, just going so fast, so focused, 8 hours plus, and we don't even take time to breathe, let alone to have a cup of tea or go for a walk around the block or to sit down and eat our lunch away from a screen or get outside. In doing that, I think it is taking breaks, making sure you take your leave. We all are entitled to take holidays. We're entitled to take days off when we're not feeling well or we're sick. And the other thing you talked about a little bit earlier is really manage the notifications and distractions. So I have no work-related anything on my smartphone, on my phone. And how can you also reduce that noise within your, computer or your desktop at work by turning all of those things off and really focusing on the task at hand without, using Do Not Disturb on Teams or Zoom or Slack or whatever that looks like. And, really thinking about how you set up your day and your week to do the work that you need to get done and not letting other people kind of interrupt your precious time when you're thinking deeply or creating something or innovating.
Sure. That is such a good point. So, with the applications you mentioned on mobile, do you think that Gen Zs are the ones that, they're always on the go? So they have all the
Sorry, what was that?
I'm just saying that Gen Zs, the Gen Z generation.
Oh, Gen Z.
Gen Z, yeah. So,
Yeah.
Gen Zs are always on the go. So they need everything on their mobile application, on their watch, and they're always scrolling. So how do you think that, do you have any data, like how are they managing their work-life balance, or are they still, getting burnout? Or
Yeah. Well, I haven't done a lot of research in this space, but what I kind of generically are reading about is that Gen Z tend to be a lot more like, I'm not putting up with that.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to use this flexible work policy to my advantage. I'm not actually going to put up with a toxic manager. I'm quitting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be working these crazy long hours if you're not paying me or rewarding me.
True.
Now that's some of that generation, but there's always going to be in any generation the outliers, and it kind of comes back to that, this work addiction, this perfectionism, the ones that are really ambitious.
True.
But I guess my belief is that we can be successful. We can be high performing. We can achieve the things we want to achieve in a way that's sustainable. We don't need to work crazy hours. We don't need to impact our health in the process, lose friendships, not spend enough time with our family.
Yeah.
You can have both.
Yeah. That is great point. You talked about sustainability. So what do you think? I had read of your post about human sustainability. It really was really great. So just wanted to understand, what do you think are the signs of human, employee burnout rather?
Are the signs of employee burnout?
Yeah.
Yeah. So burnout research by Christina Maslark and a guy later, the three key signs around burnout are exhaustion, cynicism, and low professional efficacy. So, the obvious one being exhaustion, where people get tired from working too much, not having that mental break. It's just always on their mind, even when they wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning. Cynicism, where they start to really question if they're valued, if their work is meaningful. And the low professional efficacy happens when we are really tired, fatigued, under pressure.
Yeah.
We don't actually have the ability to be performing at our best. We make mistakes. And because our mind is so busy, we really start to question our performance. Our confidence drops. So it just becomes this perfect storm.
So, when we talk about employee burnout, we have to talk about who is charged of making sure that, employees are not burnt out and they, take their leaves and they are not overloaded with work all the time. So what do you think, who's in charge of well-being at the workplace?
Well, I believe it's everybody's responsibility.
Yeah.
So the employee, the leader, the team, the senior leaders, the executive teams, the board, the organization. So there's different layers of responsibility. I do think that, managers or leaders, they play such an important role, probably one of the most important, because they are the ones that are role modeling the type of behavior that is either supporting well-being or having a negative impact. So if you have a manager that is emailing you or texting you or slacking you outside working hours and the weekends, that is creating this sense of pressure that people need to respond outside of working hours.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have me as your manager, you'll never have that.
True.
Work time is work time, unless it's an emergency, right? Like there could be a client need where you might have to call an employee outside of business hours. And, that's reasonable, but not on a regular basis. I was speaking to a friend of a friend a couple of weeks ago, and we're out for dinner actually on a Friday night, and their manager was sending them messages on Microsoft Teams on a Friday night after 7 p.m. And this person was responding.
Yeah.
So that then creates this culture where that is required. And so people don't get a really nice break or rest from working because they've been working during the day and now they're getting into their personal lives and their family lives.
Yeah.
And then it's getting interrupted. So I think it's really important that the leaders think about the role they're playing and how their behavior is actually directing the type of behavior that their team are going to display. And then at an organizational level, I do think that we need a lead on the wellbeing strategy or the organization's wellbeing approach. And I know there's obviously a lot of debate whether that sits in the health and safety team or the HR team. It doesn't actually matter where it sits. It just matters that it sits somewhere for a start off. Yeah. And then what I talk about in the Wellbeing Tick accreditation is that we actually need a cross-functional team to lead this work in an organisation. So we do need the senior leader involvement. We do need health and safety. We do need HR. We do need learning and development. We do need internal comms. We might even need property. And we need employee representation, because there's nothing worse than initiatives and frameworks and stuff coming out of HR, health and safety, people and culture teams, without actually getting the employee voice to indicate whether these things are actually going to hit the spot or not.
True. That is so true. And also, as you mentioned earlier, setting boundaries on a personal level, I think that's really important.
Yep.
Yeah. So, as my last question, what do you think companies should invest? How can companies invest in well-being of the people, and how, what do you think is the future of well-being looks like?
So the first thing I would recommend is that you actually talk to your people. gather insights, whether it's through surveys, focus groups, interviews. You really need to understand what is impacting your people's well-being, what's supporting their well-being. Like, there's probably already some really good stuff that your company's doing. So celebrate the wins, keep doing the good stuff, but find out where there are, pain points and problems, and work with your well-being team, your well-being representatives or employees in the business to actually design solutions that are going to respond to those problems. I talked earlier about how, employees, we run the risk of people rolling their eyes at another, wellness initiative being driven out of HR or health and safety. So it's really, I guess, important to focus on what are the factors that are impacting toxicity within the culture. What are the things that are getting in the way of people having a great day at work and being able to perform at their best? Excuse me. And then finally, what I'm observing in the surveys that we do is that people are not feeling recognized for the hard work that they are doing, for the hours or long hours that they're putting in. So I think it's really important that we identify ways to recognize our people on a more regular and informal basis.
True.
As well as providing them with benefits that support their well-being on a more, financial level, things that really shift the dial and that their people actually want by speaking to them.
Got it. Got the whole answer. So, that concludes our podcast. Thank you so much for, such insightful thoughts, and it was amazing talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity.